Howdy. What is a reverse budget? And why is a reverse budget why I retired early? To retire early, for me, it was reaching financial freedom, having enough money coming in that I didn't have to sell my life for 1 hour at a time, so that I don't have to work. If you can choose to work, I chose to retire after 4 more years of working because I really liked my job. But one of the main reasons I chose to retire early, and I've made some videos on tripling your life, adding more life to your years than worrying about how many years there are in your life. The number 19, the power of FU money, which if you've missed that video, it's because it's in Futureland, hasn't been made yet. But to reach financial freedom, I did not budget. So when I talk about reverse budgets, this is actually something I've had to learn since I retired. Thank you, Cody. Much appreciated. Appreciate the support. You're going to have to let me know, Cody, if you've developed some reverse budgets too, once I've explained what I mean by this. But I didn't budget to reach financial freedom because of a few reasons. You know, one of the reasons I've said in many videos is I don't want to budget because I don't want people telling me what to do. One of the goals of retiring early is, you know, people can't tell me what to do because I don't care what people say. Like Richard in the comments, I can just block him because I'm not trying to make money on YouTube. I don't need the money because I get money from other sources. So I can have that I don't care attitude. That's what I wanted. But I've said that about budgets a lot. Really, one of my problems with a budget is a budget gives you permission to spend. This is my entertainment budget. This is my eating out budget. This is my clothing budget. This is my vacation budget. These are all of the things that you go, I can justify these wants with this income. And I see the sponsor of today's video in the back. Yes, this is Skull Vodka, which actually doesn't sponsor any of my videos. They just make them possible. And in case my kids are watching, remember, you can't drink all day unless you start early. So I didn't budget to start. Now, most people should, right? If you are the type of person, and I'm going to give a couple of examples of people who should have a budget. Joe Kuhn has some really good recent videos on budgets that helped, items that you can put into your budgets that have a huge impact on your finances. But I wasn't making a lot of money and I was in a really bad financial position. And at the end of this video, I'll explain why I put this in every video, right? I was a little over 10 years ago, I was 40. Found out about $89,000 in bad debt I didn't know existed till the divorce. A single parent with 3 kids laid off from law enforcement. And budgeting really wouldn't have had an impact. I can only save so much money. I started teaching at a CDL school, only making $17 an hour. So instead of budgeting, instead of saying, here's my permission to spend on these items, which is what most people do with their budgeting, they don't do what Joe says about budgeting for certain things that help your finances. I house hacked. Now, this is not an option for everybody, so if you can't do this, budgeting is going to be almost a requirement to reach financial freedom. I moved from my house into an apartment, rented the house out for 2 years to get rental income on my tax returns so that I can get around a bad debt to income ratio to start buying rentals, which was my chosen path. You can invest in real estate. It could be stocks. You can start and growing a business. There's several ways to reach financial freedom. Mine isn't the right way. It was just the right way for me. But it was easier to do this by house hacking. When I moved from the apartment after 2 years into a duplex, my housing costs went from $1,500 a month down to $300 a month. When you can save an extra $1,200 a month to invest for your future, when you're only making $17 an hour, that's huge. So instead of budgeting, I house hacked. But the reason I have reverse budgets in retirement is budgets help us be frugal if you do them right. And in retirement, please write this down, I do not want to be frugal. If I had to be frugal, I would have stayed at work. One of the problems with budgets is you are building habits. So I needed to break those habits. The 10 years that it takes to have the discipline to say, I'm going to make as much as possible, spend less to save and invest the difference, we get stuck in this trap of always chasing the next return, chasing the next yield. When can I put this money to work to make more money? So it becomes very easy to get stuck in this habit of spending as little as possible. So how do you break that decade that it takes to reach financial freedom? Stephen, I'm in the Pacific Northwest in Kitsap County, where apparently all of the neighbors decide to do their yard work when I start a video. And somebody's parking in my yard. Get off my lawn! One of the things that helps break the habit of these 10 years is understanding your needs and wants. Right? You spent 10 years making sure your wants were covered, trying to delay the gratification on your needs. But when you retire, you need to have a list of your wants. This is the point of retiring. What is the point of retiring if retiring isn't amazing? And this comes from having your wants. For me, I raised 3 picky kids, right? One that doesn't like red meat, one that doesn't like pasta, one that will eat anything and somehow is this big around, but she still eats everything on the planet. So I took an oath when they turned 18 and moved out that I'm never going to cook again. Imagine if you set a goal for yourself to never cook again. I mean, yes, there's a flat grill and barbecue over here, but if I never want to cook again, right? My wants aren't just what I want, it's what I want to not do. And then you set a budget on eating out, right? So this is my first easiest to explain reverse budget is I set a goal of spending, not saving less than or spending less than, but spending at least $2,000 a month on eating out. A minimum budget, a reverse budget for quality of life. Now, if you do this when you're reaching financial freedom, you're probably not going to. Right? This is what happens when you retire. What are reverse budgets? So that's the easiest one to really understand. The second reverse budget for me is a travel budget. And this is the thing with reverse budgets, it's not always about money. I have a reverse travel budget of quantifiable time. It is a goal. Originally, my goal was to spend more time out of the US than in the US, traveling, enjoying my retirement. My goal for last year was blown by doing a self-funded house hack BRRRR, which I will never do again, even though it created a few $100,000. That's the point of FU money. I don't care about a few $100,000. It has no impact on my life other than it cost me this last year of travel. So this winter I'll spend in Thailand. I might take a few trips to some other places too. But the travel budget is budgeted time for traveling. I have a reverse budget. Some people have to limit their travel time to that week or 2 weeks that they get off in a year. I am limiting it to a minimum of travel time, not a maximum. I also have a reverse budget when it comes to my vehicles. To reach financial freedom, my first couple of vehicles were 15 and 17-year-old Jeep and Jeep Cherokee. And I think I had a third vehicle off and on that, I hoped one of them ran to get me to work. Always bought for cash, no payments. So in retirement, I don't want to have a car payment. I don't want to go the Robert Kiyosaki route of buy an asset to pay for your liability. So you buy a property that makes $1,000 a month and then you get $1,000 a month car payment. That's not what I want to do. I still want to buy a 2 or 3-year-old car so that I'm not taking on the biggest hit of depreciation, the wrong kind of depreciation. And my duplex, right? I have a travel triplex, a vehicle duplex, a healthcare duplex, a vodka fourplex. I have an asset for every expense, but I have a duplex that produces a little over $2,000 a month in cash flow. That $2,000 a month goes into an account that builds up over time, and every 2 or 3 or maybe 4 years, I go and I buy a 3 or 4-year-old vehicle that I really enjoy. And so I'm planning my next vehicle purchase. I retired in 2022, picked up an older F-150 because I planned on being traveling out of the country more. But my next vehicle is probably being built today, and in a year or two, I'll be buying that with the cash flow from that asset. I have a budget, a requirement I want to enjoy the vehicle that I buy. So when it comes time to buy it, I will probably really not be looking at price tags. I will be looking at what vehicle makes me the happiest, safest, comfortable, all of the things that come with buying something that big in our life. So I have a reverse vehicle budget. I have a reverse reserves budget. Now, this is a harder one to explain, so this is not a you problem, this is a me problem. Well, I lack the words to put this into something that is comprehensible. When we're growing our financial freedom, when you're investing in stocks or you're investing in real estate or you're growing a business, we want to have reserves. But you want to limit those reserves. And it's a hard concept to get across. And this is a me problem again. When I had 7 or less rentals, I kept around $10,000 in my reserves. I can handle something like a garage door breaking, a foundation repair, an eviction, or go on a date. Something like that that happens when you only have a small portfolio. Everything above 10,000, I wanted to go to work. I wanted to limit my reserves to 10,000 so that everything above that was going out to buy the next asset. As my portfolio grew, it got up to around 16 units. I increased that to 30,000. And then when I retired, I increased it to 50,000. So now instead of a $50,000, because I don't have that confidence that comes from the drug that kills your dreams, the paycheck, my $50,000 reserve sits there. When I was growing my portfolio before retiring, I wanted no more money in my reserve account than my limit, because money above that should go to work. Once I retired, the money just piled up. I wasn't worried about chasing the next deal. Now, Michael Zuber from One Rental at a Time says this very well. He talks about once you're financially free, you don't have to get good deals. You can chase greater and greater. If greater is subject to gradation, you can chase better and better deals. So only get great deals. When I started out, they weren't great deals. You're never going to get an RBI unless you get somebody on base. So I was chasing those base hits. Probably the only sports ball reference on my channel. Now, if we want to talk MMA, sure. So my reverse budget for reserves is now the higher the reserves are, the better the sleep well at night account is. If I had more money than my $10,000, $30,000, $1,000 in reserves when I was growing my portfolio, I lost sleep. I thought that money is sitting in the bank, not sitting in a property. It is costing me money. That sucked. That changes when you retire. A reverse budget that I think we should all plan for in retirement, and this one is very important, especially as the last few years have proven. I have a reverse budget for inflation. Inflation isn't going away. The Fed's goal is not to get inflation to zero or get deflation where prices go down. Their goal is to have around 2 to 3% inflation, because a little bit of inflation gives us debt destruction. Debt is easier to pay off in the future, and when you are $33 trillion in debt and not making it any smaller, you want your debt to be easier to pay off in the future. So they want some inflation, not a lot, because the Fed has two goals, right? Limit inflation, not reduce, not eliminate, but limit, and full employability, full employment. So I invested in an asset class that handles inflation, right? The last 3 years, because of inflation, my net worth tripled. Not because of any moves that I made, but because of what happened to inflation. Owning assets when there's inflation, everybody's like, oh, the stock market's going to crash. But no, inflation caused what to happen? Record high after record high after record high. Inflation is your friend when you own the assets. It's not your friend when you're working for the paycheck. An example is my $2,000 a month budget for food. That is not going to cover it in 3 or 4 years. So my assets have to generate more money in the future than they do now to cover inflation. I have a reverse budget of inflation. I am budgeting inflation into my plan by selectively choosing assets that benefit, no kidding, benefit from inflation. It's almost like One Rental at a Time has a t-shirt that he sells that says, I used inflation to get rich. Ask me how. Now, one of the last things I'll wrap up with is I have two ends that I use with my reverse budgets, but the first one is my time budget. I have a reverse budget for time. When you are working, when you are selling your life 1 hour at a time, you get a very limited amount of time and you have to budget down. I will only spend this much time losing time to Netflix. I will only, and this one hurts, only spend this much time playing D&D or playing World of Warcraft or losing time. You have to limit your time with that budget. When you retire, I have reverse budgets of I will learn something new. I will take an ASL class. I will, if I didn't take the oath, find a cooking class, find a hot yoga class, find a whatever, something that you are saying. I will have a minimum amount of time that I'm going to dedicate to learning and doing something that makes my life better. Instead of I have a limited amount of time that I have to limit these things to, I have all of the time to make sure I'm not wasting it. I have a reverse budget on the time I spend doing those things. And then my two ends is the first thing is I have nice and new. These are the two: nice and news. So, nice. I don't purchase for saving. I purchase for value. If you're buying shirts and you have different shirts, and yes, I have different ones to make a funny statement in a video, but for the most part, I have a closet full of grunt style. I tried True Classic, not bad, but for some reason, I'm a super short guy with a really long torso and they just don't work. So I went to grunt style. They cost more than any shirt I've ever bought, right? And they don't even cost a lot, but I buy for value. And that's just an example of shirt. When I go to a restaurant, one of the goals of reaching financial freedom and having that reverse budget on food is I look at the menu or I look at the restaurant that I'm in and I never think, what's the best value here? For my money, what am I getting? I look and I go, what do I feel like having today? I want to buy nice. And then new, this is those things I was talking about the cooking class, the dancing class, the something. I want to make sure that my time is going to something new, right? People talk about life being short. And one of the biggest people who complain on channels like mine is they say, why would you worry about retiring early? Life is short. Live for now. Don't save for the future. And I'm like, yeah, life is short. And if you live one decade different than everybody else, you can live the next few decades, which are very short and very limited, completely different than everyone else around you can. And then people get that half right, that live for today, don't worry about tomorrow because tomorrow's not promised. Now remember, the next decade is not promised, but it's very likely. If you want your questions answered in a live stream, I'm here every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific, and I try to keep these videos short. This one went a little bit longer than normal. Well, there were no Richards in the comment. Don't be a Richard. There were some good questions that I would like to answer, like, aside from real estate, do you have a stock portfolio? If you'd like to know that, Stephen, this next Tuesday, if I can remember, I will be doing, somebody message me, please, if you're one of my friends, a video on why I only own real estate and nothing else. Nothing. If I owned one stock or had one penny in a retirement account, I would still be working. Have a week full of awesome. I'm gonna.